This new year, why not let Audible expand your life by listening? Explore over 1 million audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive Audible originals that'll inspire and motivate you. Tap into your well-being with advice and insight from leading professionals and experts on better health, relationships, career, finance, investing, and more. Maybe you want to kick a bad habit or start a good one. If you're interested in learning how to master your emotions and hearing scientifically backed advice for using your emotions as a tool, may I suggest Shift by psychologist and bestseller author Dr. Ethan Kross? Trust me, listening on Audible can help you reach the goals you set for yourself. Start listening today when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Edit audio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Hopkins, and this is Well Adjusting, where I talk to people about life stuff, but not in an NPR way. It's more like we're at the bar, having cocktails, getting into your business sort of way.
It's giving drunk NPR.
Oh, and producer Steph is here too.
Hello.
Today we chat, well, dealing with chronic pain. Hi, friends. Woo, am I excited to have you back for another episode. Today, Emily is joining us. Now, she is a lovely human who has recently finished a graduate degree. Yay, Emily. And now she is embarking on that work life. And she's finding that she doesn't quite have the time that she did before to take care of her chronic pain condition. But like all conversations on Well Adjusting, we have to ask the question, is it actually an issue of time? Or is it an issue of adjusting to a new phase and maybe being kind to yourself and figuring out how to best manage your own care? Chronic conditions that shift and change are absolutely no walk in the park. So I am so thrilled that Emily bravely decided to join us so we can hopefully help her look at things in a different light. Let's get right to it.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm 26. I recently finished my master's degree in creative writing, and I'm now working as a student advisor in a creative arts uni, but I'm really trying to keep working on my own writing at the weekend.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, can you tell us in a sentence or two, like, what's the problem you want us to help you unpack?
So I've been suffering from chronic pain for 3 or so years. As a result of some injuries in like the preceding years. It's been over the last 10 years, I think. And I think with the changes of starting full-time work, moving away from uni where I had quite a flexible schedule, I'm adjusting both emotionally and physically to that kind of new day-to-day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I like to chat about managing that really.
Can I ask you a few questions? And if anything is too personal, then you just say, beat it, Robin. I don't want to talk about that. But is your chronic pain something that's going to be with you forever? Can you give us a little bit of that kind of background?
Yeah. So the short answer is I don't know, okay. Which is great of itself. I think probably, given how long I've had some of the issues, but one of the things that I struggle with actually is that it doesn't come under a condition that I've seen a lot of information about. It seems like it is permanent. I'm managing it better than I was, mm-hmm. but the change of context and circumstances that I'm living in, having less flexibility with my schedule is harder, or it's different and I'm not as practiced at it.
Yeah.
One of the things is in my forearms, which I think was originally like tendonitis type mm-hmm. pain. And that can be anything from my fingertips to my elbows, my knees, and then also like foot pain. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of aching and it can come from a position that I'm in. It can come from certain movement. I've done physio treatment, which did really help because I went through a really long period of time of being very afraid of being active and hurting myself more.
Yeah.
And I eventually was able to see a lovely, lovely physio who it just did wonders for me. He said, look, let's deal with everything holistically. And he said, don't be afraid that it's going to hurt. It is going to be sore when you do more exercise, but that doesn't mean you're damaging your body more.
Yeah.
Which I think was really important for me when dealing with it at that stage. The trouble with exercise is that often I don't know until a day or two later what it is that I've really done. And then there's kind of learning to differentiate between, oh, that's just like muscle fatigue because like any other normal person, I don't know, I've done a new exercise or worked a part of my body that I haven't used for a long time. So there's learning what's the difference between that and what's actually something that's come from a chronic pain thing. And I think, certainly for me anyway, but I think it's probably quite common that women can have a different relationship to pain because of like period cramps. And I was so accustomed to just every month I have to just get through my day-to-day being in this kind of pain. And if something wasn't as bad as that or was only as bad as that, I'd be like, well, it can't be that bad, can it? And so I think there's an extent to which I can tune it out, and there's an extent to which I'm like, oh, that hurts, but I'm used to it. And then there comes times like, I think particularly if I'm on my feet a lot, that will be something which both for my knees and feet can end up like causing a flare up, especially depending on the time of the month and what my hormones are doing. I think there is a relationship with that.
What you're describing is really hard. So I just want to first say, like, I'm sorry you're dealing with this, because it's like, I think you brought up women, and it's like, and I'm not one of those people who's just like, women have it harder, but I just think that women are written off in healthcare in a lot of ways. And we talk about that regularly on this podcast. I think that there are many symptoms that can mimic things like, you know, it's like, you're like, oh, that's a symptom of PMS, or that's a symptom of this. And then Google doesn't help. Like you get in there and you're like, well, now I was recently diagnosed with celiac disease, and I had myself self-diagnosed with Parkinson's. Like I was like, I mean, within 5 seconds, I was like, well, I've got Parkinson's. And it's like, no, I don't, I'm not knocking wood. I don't have Parkinson's, but it's, you can go down this whole wormhole and to not just have someone be like, you have X and do these 3 things. That's a really hard position. So I just want to make space for that. And I want to ask you, before we even talk about anything else, how are you approaching that? Because you're like not even getting into the pain. You're living with a thing that's like shifting and moving, and you're trying to figure out like how to exist with it. And then life keeps throwing you these weird little curveballs. So are you making space for yourself to take care of yourself in that regard?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think one of the things which has come with the shift in working full time, which is normal, but you know, I'm adjusting to it. It's just being busier and I'm getting used to like having less time to see my friends and less time in the evening and less time in the morning, which is hard because I had got into a really good routine of doing certain physio exercises before I left the house, which is really helpful for me to do on a regular basis in the morning because it's before I'm moving around, and so it's warming my body up and stretching it and preparing it. But I don't have time. People will say, couldn't you get up earlier? I would have to go to bed earlier, and I'm already not going to bed early enough. So I'm then doing that physio at the end of the day on the days that I'm not otherwise busy. So I'm trying, but it's just not ideal.
Yeah. Well, you're also transitioning. You're at this point in your life when you're going from, you had a set schedule with school and you had a way of being, and then all of a sudden now you're just like, okay, and grown up. And now you go to this job, and then this is what your life looks like. And there is certainly less time and space. However, I'm putting my mom voice on though, Emily. I'm about to like lean in a little closer and get my mom voice. You do have to, well, you don't have to. I'm gonna correct myself in real time. It would be helpful to you. Like you can do one thing, you can not do it, and then your life's gonna look a certain way, or you can do it and your life's gonna look a certain way. And this may be like a moment to be like walking out of this conversation. One of the things that you want to make a change on is making sure you do that, because that's self-care. Like, because if you don't, there is going to be an impact on your body. Like some of this, I just want to like hopefully assure you is like you're still getting to know yourself and your body. And it takes years to like be like, oh, that's what that is like in that cycle of my physical health. And that's how I feel here. And that's how I feel then. And oh, when I'm like that, I should do this. And we don't always do it. Like I should go to the gym 3 times every single week. I should eat on my food plan every single, it's like, and sometimes I nail that. And sometimes I'm like, well, I guess I'm punishing myself this week. And so I just think like giving yourself I hate this phrase, but like give yourself some grace while you're learning yourself and while you're dealing with the ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I think I've definitely been through periods of time where I tend to it is hard because I don't know the why of everything.
Yeah.
And so I guess I've come up with reasons, but I became less active kind of in the latter part of lockdowns. There was less to do, and possibly that meant my body became weaker. And then when I started being more active again, it was more vulnerable. But yeah, I think I can, in view of kind of giving myself a bit of grace, for want of a better phrase, I think sometimes I can go really far the other way and be hard on myself about it. And then, yeah, I try really hard to have it balanced, I think, with the kind of, I guess it's like, what's the must, should and coulds of looking after myself, which is doing certain physio exercises every day in the morning, doing other ones like when I get home, on the days that I'm going to work, going to the gym a couple of times a week, in order to keep my body stronger, which like protects me from getting more sore. And I know that is helping. I guess it can also be a bit frustrating that like there's so much exercise that I have to do that it takes away from what I want to do. And I don't want to fall into like self-pity and bitterness about that. But at the same time, I think I haven't taken a lot of time at all in like the last 3 years to like grieve over the like A, not being in pain, and B, just like the social opportunities, the like exercise and sport opportunities. One of the injuries that I have evolved from when I started rock climbing, which was when I started my undergrad degree like 7 years ago. And so when I went to do my master's, I wanted to get really involved in the climbing club, and I did, but I couldn't climb. So it was where I spent a lot of my time in headspace and had friends, but I couldn't fully participate.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, why did I put myself in that situation?
Well, because you wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, you know what I mean? Like there's a real grief of like, just, it sucks that you have to deal with this.
Yeah.
Like that this is part of your existence. But I feel like it's a real fine line of being like, you can, like, I'm picturing you like on a little balance beam, like walking. And it's like, if you fall to one side, you could fall into your grief. If you fall to the other side, you could fall into not thinking about it and not taking care of yourself. Yeah. So it's like finding that balance where you take care of yourself, but you're not so rigid that you can live, and you support yourself, but you allow yourself to have your feelings. And that is got to be a world record on well adjusting for the thing that is probably the hardest thing to do, but easiest thing to say. But I suspect that that's going to be your journey is starting to like I'm dying to like send you a journal to have you start to write down how you're feeling. Or like, it's almost like, have you ever seen, like, I mean, I know you're in the UK, but the New Yorker has this like quadrant thing. It's like, is it less this, more this? And you like plot things out. Like on the one corner, I have like grief. On the other, I have joy. On the other, I have like pain. So like you take your rock climbing exercise that brought you some joy, but it would also be in the quadrant of grief. And then, you know, like not doing your physio is like some pain, but also some like more social time. So like starting to plot out like what brings you what, so you can, by the way, I'm not a doctor in any way, so just take this with a grain of salt, but like the journey is learning about whatever's going on with you physically, but it's also about learning Emily.
Yeah.
And how you are responding to all of this, and what brings you grief, what brings you joy, what brings you social, what makes you feel better or worse.
Yeah. When you mentioned about journaling, actually, it's something that I think about a lot because I do a really like short journaling activity before I go to bed, where I just like write down 2 things I'm grateful for in the day and 2 things that I've like achieved. I'm trying also to add in like 2 things that I've learned because I think that's nice, but I would like to do some more like free form or like longer journaling. Again, it's like a time thing, and a lot of my writing time at the moment goes into my creative writing.
I have some thoughts that are brewing, but I see Steph's making the face, so I want to hear what Steph says.
I did this one exercise a few years ago that was like sort of separating the grief I had into categories. And one was like the grief of a loss of like self or my identity, like what I thought I could be, you know, that sort of thing. And then a grief of relationships, like things I had to leave behind, people I have to leave behind, people like treating me differently, whatever. And then a third that was, this is going to sound silly, like dreams or plans. Like I think like separating that into different categories helped me because it felt like this like big mass of like things I wasn't dealing with, and then I would be like, well, it's fine, I can just take it, I can take it, like who cares if like that friend is treating me shitty, or who cares if like I can't, you know, go to this thing on this day, like whatever. I guess my point is that sometimes the grief can be overwhelming and look like this big like blobby cloud, but separating it out helped me. Do you? How do you?
Yeah, that sounds useful. I like lists and breaking things down. And I know I think what you said about like dreams is like it doesn't resonate as silly with me because I get it. Like it reminded me like it's so easy to play what if, I think. But if I hadn't had to take the time out of my degree, I would have finished it a year earlier. And I guess I would have, in theory, been like in the working world a year longer. Or actually what I had planned to do post-uni was take a bit of time to work and then explore some sort of traveling. But I feel a lot more like of a homebody than I was before, because if I did travel, I would want to walk around a lot and be really active, and I don't really know the limits of that yet, and I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, I guess.
But maybe that's a good thing, though, Emily.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good thing that you did that, because what if you had planned this big, glorious trip and then you got there and you were like just miserable on it? Like, I almost want to be like, get to know yourself first and then plan that big trip as like a celebration of like when you understand how your body works and what works for you. Like it's going to take a minute, even though you've been in this for a decade, it still might take a minute because your life is shifting and changing. And I just get this like feeling like you're doing a lot of things, like, because you'll be like, yeah, no, I do journal, and then I do these 2 things, and I do, it's like you're doing all these lovely things, but it's like there's an undercurrent of it's still not enough. And you are doing a lot. You probably have to just learn how to just be a little bit, you know? Because the question I wanted to ask, but I don't think I should ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is what aren't you doing that you wish you were doing? And the only reason I'm actually going to say it out loud is because I feel like Emily, there's really only so many minutes and hours in a day, right? And you have a million things you want to do to heal yourself. Like I want you to just be nice to yourself. Like you are really paying attention to this and you're taking care and you're doing all that. But I want you to look at prioritizing. Yeah. Like what are the things that give you the most return of investment, that make you feel the best?
Yeah.
What are the things that you should be paying more attention to, but you're like, and leveling them out and having them in buckets so that you're getting like, it's almost like a that like nutrition pyramid. Like, I need to get in a day, I need to get in 3 of these things that really help me. And if I get in 2 of these, and if I get 1 of these, then I get a gold star. But if I don't, I'm still amazing.
First of all, like you got me kind of pinned on that. I feel like I need to do everything all at once, and I've got like these endless to-do lists which like fill up pages in my notebook and everything's highlighted. And I said this to my mum yesterday. I was like, we always seem to know how to create more work for ourselves. I said to her, I think other people actually sometimes sit down on weekends and like stop. And I wish I was spending more time on the weekends just like sitting and reading, like curled up on a sofa or something. both because I enjoy it and because it helps with my writing. And I would like to be writing more, and there are things that I also have like a little to-do list in my head for making my writing setup better. I'd like to be climbing more regularly, but it was huge last year. I'm just gonna drop this in as a side note. When I was finally able to start climbing again, after like 4 years, and I did that over a period of, I don't know, 4 or 6 months, and then I did a separate injury, and then I moved back in with my parents, and there's nowhere nearby. So now I'm trying to learn to drive as well, which should help with a lot of things with the pain. But yeah, you can see it happening again.
I can see it's happening in real time.
Do this,
Emily.
do this,
and all of them have equal weight and value of what needs to be done.
The prioritizing I find really hard, in a sense of like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I want to do? What's someone else expecting me to do? Yeah.
I feel like throughout all of this, I'm like resisting the urge so hard to like give you like a list or work or whatever. And I know Robin is too, because
that's what we do.
You are doing a lot. And also because Robin and I both are not good at just sitting around on the weekend. So like there is a very real thing that we're all just like, oh yeah, totally. And like cheersing each other. And I guess the other thing is that when you're talking about all of the different things that you're doing and like the grief that you have and all of this, it just sounds like you're sort of punishing yourself. And I guess I think that might be a more underlying feeling that dealing with that could help with a bunch of different areas. But I also don't want to tell you you're punishing yourself if you don't feel like you are, you know, because in a lot of ways, like, you know, knowing something about yourself so young is a fucking superpower. Like, do you know how many 26-year-olds have literally never tuned into their body? Like me. I like at 26 was just like fucking wasted working 17 jobs, like whatever.
Those are good times.
And in some ways that's a privilege, but it is me just being bad to myself. In a lot of ways, you are steps ahead of people. And I'm wondering if there's just like more times in a day or a week or a year, whatever feels manageable to you, that you can just, you know, high five yourself a bit and be like sweet to yourself. Because I feel like instead of doing that, we're getting into this loop of like punishment, which then makes everything feel like you're just like walking through fucking cement every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I find it, at some point last year, maybe I kind of identified it in myself of like, how much time do I spend just feeling guilty? And sometimes it will happen and I'm like, I don't know why. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, that thing happened earlier in the day. Sometimes I'll be like, I said that thing to that person that they've probably forgotten already. And I just like I don't know. It's strange and I don't really know where it's come from. I'm a lot of a people pleaser, I think, and I'm much more aware of it and have been much more aware of it in the last few years. But so maybe it's associated with that. And I think trying to find that like authentic self-validation that doesn't feel like I'm also trying to have like completed a task, because I started doing, I mentioned earlier about when I do a little bit of journaling at the end of the day and I write a couple of things that I'm grateful for that happened, and I write a couple of things that I've achieved in the day. And that idea came from something that I think I read somewhere about getting validation from yourself and not expecting to get it internally and not externally, and not relying on getting it externally to fight the kind of people pleaser thing. But I think it is still like, if I get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, what have I done today? And then I haven't, and then is then undermining itself. And so I think finding that path for like feeling like and saying that I'm doing great without feeling like I have to have achieved too much to do that.
Yeah. I think disconnecting it from what has happened in the day and connecting it to like, I mean, this is
right
silly.
Now.
Yeah. Like right now, what is happening? How am I feeling? Blah, blah, blah. And it could be something so tiny. I mean, literally Robin and I did this exercise that was like us sending each other voice notes of things that were like, what was it? Grateful or beautiful in a day? I don't even remember.
Oh, we have a moment of joy. We had to send a moment of joy each day to each other.
And like sometimes like, oh my God, I got this pen and it's great. It's
Which,
like,
by the way, she was really good at it. I sucked at it, Emily. I was like, what joy? I was like, well, do I have joy today? Like, it's not easy, but it was helpful.
But focusing on little teeny things, first of all, makes you notice them more. And then second of all, makes it feel less like a day has to be productive to be pretty.
Yeah.
I was also thinking, because you're a Dear Headspace listener, which is the other podcast that I host over on Headspace, and Dora talks about it a lot, but all the meditation teachers talk about the stop technique. And it's something I've been trying to implement lately. And it's stop stands for, the S is literally stop, and the T is take a breath, and then the O is observe, and then the P is proceed. And I kept, like, they would say, use the stop technique, and I'd be like, that's so great, I'm definitely going to do that. And then like some crisis would pop up and I'd be like, motherfucker, and I would react in like the worst possible way. And then the next day I'd be like, why didn't I do the stop technique? After about 1 million instances of me not doing the stupid stop technique, I asked, and Dora said, well, you have to practice during good times so that when you are in crisis, it becomes part of your reaction. And I added in, like, when I observe, I put my hand over my heart, because it is not, much like I think what you're describing, I struggle with understanding what in the hell is going on for me at any given moment. So I have started doing that, like when things are good, just, and then what I find is, like, I did it yesterday because I took my son skiing and I was very tired. I hadn't slept the night before. I could already hear myself making up all these stories. I was like, oh, this is gonna be such a long day. It's 5 hours of driving. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this stop technique. I was walking to the car, I did it, and I was like, as I was doing it, my hand on my heart, I'm walking down the streets at 6 a.m., and I'm like, I must look like an absolute idiot. I'm like, but don't care. And I was observing, and in my observation, I was like, oh, like, I'm stressed out. I am not at all present. I'm making this mean all these things. And then I had a thought of like how to proceed, which was just like, during this day, when I start to feel like, oh, it's just too much, there's too much happening, can I look for something that's cool that's happening? Could I like have like a little grateful moment? And it shifted my entire day for me being present and not feeling it was some burden to drive 6 hours. And like it wasn't, and it ended up being lovely. And it's a long-winded story, but my point is, like, are there things that you can put into place to slow down in the moment? Yeah. Whether it is like with Steph's point, a moment of joy, or the stop technique, or a quick meditation, or something to help you go, what am I feeling right now? Is this grief? Am I feeling like I'm missing out? Or am I making myself feel bad because I'm not doing 100 things that I should be when I really just want to be on a couch reading? Like, I get the impression that there's just so many things happening that physical pain is just adds a layer of confusion. And there needs to be a slowing down so you can see what you're really feeling.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I'm still like not built into my routine since starting full-time work is a meditation and mindfulness to the extent that I like. I do positive affirmations in the morning and I do the little journaling thing in the evening. But last year, I got into meditating for 10 minutes every morning through Headspace, and I miss that so much. But I think finding a way to build it in more regularly would help with the slowing down, or something different. Maybe I should
Should
have a look into it. I've got a lovely colleague who is super into meditation, so I'm sure it'd be really easy to have a chat with her about it. Even just doing that would probably help.
I think it's like we've said a number of things, and I think any of them may or may not work or be helpful to you. But what I don't want it to do is to send you into a jogging path of, now I need to meditate for an hour a day. Then we just made things worse, right? Because then you're just like, now I have less time. So I feel like the only homework that I think I would like to say to you is, I just want you to, maybe it's a weekend, maybe it's a day, like, and in my head, you're in pajamas. It's like, it's wintry, it's cold, you're staying in, maybe you've got some hot cocoa, and you're just like luxuriating in the idea of what are the things that, and all you got to do is make a list of, these are the things that make me happy. These are the things that make me feel physically better. These are things that sort of work. And these are the things that are generally, when I'm doing these things, I know I'm not being kind to myself. maybe you think of it like if I'm in a food program where they talk about like red light foods, green light foods, yellow light foods. Green is go, yellow is, well, proceed with caution. And red is like, you really should not be eating that, Robin. The Snickers bar in the closet's a bad idea. So like, I'm almost thinking of it like red light, yellow, green for you of like, what are the things? And then when you're in a spot, you have that list to go back to and go, I don't feel great. I'm going to take one of the things off my green list. And I just want to do that. The reason I want you in cozy pajamas and for a weekend is because I just want you to decompress a little. Like I don't know how anyone can deal with something chronic that's not going to go away, that's painful if you're up here, like agitated and at a 9. It just like I don't even know how you get to handling that. Because I do want to see you maybe look for a support group or something, because I think that there could be other people who just maybe you'll get inspiration of like how they live that might just help you know yourself better. But I also feel like that's secondary.
Yeah. I think I'm like resisting the same urge because it feels like you are doing so much and so much of what you're doing is like invisible. And on top of that, you're doing so much that is visible, So it's like you're doing a lot. Even when we just talked about, mindfulness practices and meditation. And the first thing you said was, I'm not doing it to the degree that I want to be doing it. Which to me implies there's some sort of like punishment to you. Like you're like, ugh, why am I not doing this to the best of my ability, And I just want you to like every day have a mantra or something until you believe it that is like, I am doing enough and I'm trying to be slow or something. Like I'm going to slow down and I'm doing enough. And I want you to do that until you believe it.
The mantra is, be kind to me. That's the mantra. Be kind to me.
Which is hilarious again, because like I probably could use 9,000 more of that mantra. And so I want to say I'm recognizing that. But yeah.
And I just want to add on and then hear what you think about this, Emily. But like, I think embracing the imperfection.
Yeah.
Because it is not, life is just not perfect. It is just not, it doesn't always go the way we want. But remembering that in those moments of imperfection, sometimes totally different things come up that are helpful to you. And I think we have to embrace that. Yeah. I mean, well, you don't have to. If you don't, it's just going to maybe feel a little more like, I'm in a straitjacket. It's just too hard. And you've got these things. I want you to like make the bar lower for yourself.
Yeah. I can try doing that.
What do you think? What do you think, Emily?
I'm not going to say I'm going to find it easy. No, I think what you talked about with the red, green, what?
Red, yellow, green.
I wrote it down so that I would remember, and I wrote RGB, which is red, green, blue. But you actually said red,
like
yellow,
a stoplight.
green.
It's a stoplight.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that'll be useful. I think the stop thing that you mentioned before, which I think you're right, I have heard Dora talk about it. And she also talks sometimes about sticking Post-its up. I think it's her that says that. Maybe I should just write stop on a Post-it note and like stick it in a few different places, because that might help. And I think what you said about a support group, like that sounds useful. I spoke to a friend recently who had a recent diagnosis of another, a specific chronic pain issue. And I said, like, do you want to talk about it? So that's kind of a start. I get a lot of imposter syndrome with it because I don't have a specific diagnosis. Like when you fill in forms, it's like, do you have a disability? And I'm like, well, no, I don't think it's classed as that. It's a chronic health, long-term health condition. Do I need adjustments sometimes? Does it affect my day-to-day life? Yes, but I can still walk around and like get on the bus and have a job. And I think feeling like I'm not fully functional and healthy, like, that makes me feel a bit weird.
Well, you're a writer, Emily. What happens when you have an idea and you're in that first draft and you're trying to lay out your topic sentence and you're just like struggling and you're just like, fuck, what is this story? What is this thing? And then you just like, what do they tell you to do? Like a vomit draft. Blah. Yeah. Say all the things. I want you to vomit draft this and get your narrative. What is your sentence that you are comfortable saying? I have chronic pain that affects my mobility and my joints. I want you to find your sentence and then I want you to embrace it. Because like what I heard you saying was like me, every time my family goes to customs and they're like, are you married and are you a family? I'm always like, are we a family? We're not really technically married. We're domestic partners, but she is my wife. We are traveling together. Let's all just go up to the booth together. Like it took me a really long time. It was like the stupidest thing. So it's like getting your words and just accepting and saying it. And since you're a writer, write it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have all the confidence in the world you're going to tackle this. It is really wonderful that you have this level of knowledge at this age. It's only going to get better. You're only going to know yourself more, and you're only going to learn to protect yourself more.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, I just want to say thank you so much for, just for being willing to talk about this with us and for breaking it down with us. I love this conversation, and I do want some kind of a follow-up from you. I want to hear how things go.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't think I allow myself the space to talk about it a lot to this depth, and particularly on the kind of grief point. I think there's so much of I just need to get through and do the thing. That it's the stop, isn't it? And I suppose this is a bit of a stop of okay, checking in and asking me questions that I don't always allow myself to consider. So yeah, it's really helpful, and hopefully I'll do it in my head a bit more.
Yes.
And yeah, let you know how I'm getting on.
So after that lovely chat with Emily, it occurred to me that I have referenced Dora Kamau from Headspace. She's a meditation teacher that I just absolutely love. I've referenced her and the stop technique about a bazillion times on this podcast. So it felt like it was the right time to get that real expert on stop in here to share her wisdom on the technique. So here is Dora.
You have reached the well-adjusting expert of the day.
Hey, it's Dora here from Headspace, and I'm excited to share about a commonly used acronym in the mindfulness world called the STOP technique. And this acronym can be really helpful in working with our thoughts or emotions, or helping us to respond more skillfully to some of the more challenging moments in life, or really when we just need to invite a sense of pause into our day. What I know from stress and how stress can be continued is through being on autopilot, being asleep to our lives, just kind of moving from one thing to the next thing, caught up in the motions. And so stop is a process that can allow us to interrupt that habitualness. So the S stands for stop, take a brief pause. The T stands for take a deep breath, or 2 or 3 or 4, or however many you may need. The O stands for observe. So noticing your thoughts, feelings, noticing your environment, bodily sensations, without judgment and full of curiosity and kindness, really getting curious around what's going on. The P stands for proceed mindfully. So proceed with a response that you've actually taken the time to think about. And this is a practice that you may have to do a few times before it becomes second nature. We live in a world where there's so many different distractions, so many different things that are vying for our attention. So being able to intentionally stop and pause and take a moment kind of goes against everything else that we're experiencing in the world. But again, there is so much freedom to be found in our ability just to stop and pause and notice what's going on before we respond. The stop technique can really help with things like emotional regulation and feeling grounded and connected to our bodies. So highly recommend, try it out. I hope this is helpful. And until next time, take care. Peace.
Now, aren't you glad we got the real accredited mindfulness teacher in here to explain stop? Much better. Thank you, Dora, for joining us and sharing all that wisdom in that lovely, calm voice that instantly helps my shoulders drop. And if you want more Dora in your life, and who would not want that, you can follow Dora on Instagram at Dora Kamau, and that's DoraKamau on Instagram. And thanks again to Emily for joining us today and bravely sharing her story with us. For more Robin, and you may need that, you probably don't need it, but if you do, you can follow me at Real Rob Hops on all the platforms, all the socials, as the kids today say. Well Adjusting is an Edit Audio original series. It's exec produced by Steph Colburn and Robin Hopkins. Our producer and editor is Maria Passingham, and our production manager is Kathleen Speckard. Thank you to the entire Edit Audio team and to you for listening. Oh, hey, before you take out those AirPods, this show is just for entertainment. If you are in need of help, please, please, please reach out to a professional. Go ahead and get that help. You deserve it.